Smartphone cameras are powerful, but a good photo still starts with how you approach it. So before you even tap the shutter, there are a few basic habits that can make a big difference. Sometimes you have to react quickly so you don't miss the shot, but usually you have time to build a composition. So before you raise your camera, just pause for a moment and ask yourself, what makes this particular scene interesting? Is it the lights? Is it the colors? The characters? Figure out what story you want to tell and frame your photo around that. Secondly, clean your lens. It's easy to forget, and it sounds kind of obvious, but a smudge or fingerprint will leave your whole image looking soft. A quick wipe is worth it every time. You might be used to pinching to zoom on your iPhone. Well, in the Leica Lux app, it works a bit differently depending on which mode is active. When you pinch in photo mode, you switch between the physical lenses on your iPhone. When you pinch in aperture mode, you switch lens simulations. And actually, instead of pinching to zoom, you might find it easier to just open up the lens selector and choose the right lens for the moment directly. Smartphone cameras often set the focus point automatically. Sometimes they get it right, but not always, so don't leave it to chance. Tap directly on what you want in focus. That single gesture also sets the exposure for that part of the image. It helps prevent blown out highlights and silhouettes in scenes where the lighting is tricky. It only takes 1 second and gives you clear control over both sharpness and brightness. And finally, when you're ready, steady your shot. Hold the phone with 2 hands. That extra bit of stability helps to avoid motion blur, especially when you're shooting in lower light. These aren't rules, just simple habits to help you shoot with more intention, even when you're out and about and on the move with just your phone. When you take the time to connect with the scene, you end up capturing images that truly reflect what you saw and felt in that moment. Composition is about making choices. What to include, what to leave out, and how to place elements in your frame so your image tells one coherent story. Let's talk about a couple of principles to help you out. The Leica Lux app includes some practical tools to help you while you're shooting. The level indicator, for example, helps you keep your horizon straight. The histogram helps you monitor exposure. But my favorite tool is the grid overlay. It helps you to follow the rule of thirds, which is a classic technique for making your images feel more dynamic. Here's how it works. Instead of centering your subject, try placing it near one of the points where the grid lines intersect. This creates asymmetry, a kind of imbalance which encourages the eye to explore how the elements in the frame relate to each other. It's this act of exploration which adds energy to an otherwise static image. Off-center framing also leaves space for supporting elements like environmental context, background details, or leading lines. This helps you tell a more layered story with your image. Aspect ratios are another great tool for composition. They define the shape of your frame, which affects how much space surrounds your subject. And they influence how the image is read and where the viewer's eye naturally travels. Wide frames encourage horizontal flow. Great for landscapes, scenes with horizontal movements, or when you want to include more context for your subject. Tall aspect ratios compress the frame and emphasize verticality. And square frames enforce symmetry and simplicity. They challenge you to focus on central subjects. When framing your image, consider this. What's the subject and what kind of space does it need? With Leica Lux, you can always reframe your scene later. The app saves the full uncropped image no matter which aspect ratio you chose when you took the photo. You can reinterpret the same scene with a different aspect ratio, orientation, and focal length. These were just a couple of ways to approach composition. But good composition isn't about following rules. It's about making intentional decisions that shape how your image feels. And these decisions could break all the rules, so just play around with it. See what works best for your subject and the story that you want to tell. Automatic settings on your smartphone camera are great for speed, but sometimes it just doesn't get it right. Manual controls in the Leica Lux app let you craft an image that matches your creative vision. Manual focus lets you control the distance your camera focuses on from close-up to far away. This is great in low lights or high contrast scenes where autofocus can struggle, or in close-up shots where precise focus is important. ISO controls how sensitive the sensor is to light. Lower ISO works well in well-lit conditions, and higher ISO helps in the dark, but it adds digital noise. Understanding ISO helps you balance exposure and texture to fit your creative vision. White balance adjusts the colors in your photo to make whites look natural under different lighting conditions. There's warm indoor lights or cool daylights. Manual controls are perfect for tricky lighting, but they're also great for creative expression. Shutter speed in particular is a fun one to experiment with. Shutter speed controls how long the camera's sensor is exposed to light. Do you want blur? Use a slower speed. Want to freeze motion? Go faster. You can use shutter speed creatively to decide if you want your photo to feel dynamic or still. Manual controls can be overwhelming, but you can start simple. Change just one setting at a time and see what it does. As you become more confident, you unlock your creativity. And the next time automatic settings don't give you what you want, you can trust yourself to take control. Most of the lens simulations in the Leica Lux app are modeled after real Leica lenses. They don't just determine focal length, they have their own unique optical characteristics. Each one changes how the scene is framed, how space is rendered, and how your subject stands out. The lens simulations in Leica Lux behave like prime lenses in the real world. That is, they have a fixed focal length. The lenses fall into three categories: wide angle, standard, and telephoto. One important thing to note: the types of lens simulations available in the app reflect the types of physical lens on the back of your iPhone. For example, if you only see the wide angle and standard lens simulations, those are the fields of view that your device offers. Now, let's take a closer look at each category. Wide-angle lenses, like the Summilux M28s, bring in more of the environment. They're great for landscapes, architecture photography, or close-up situations where space is tight. Standard lenses, like the Noctilux M50, offer a natural and balanced perspective, similar to how the human eye sees. These are often the go-to choice for street photography. Telephoto lenses create a tight focus on your subject. They compress the space and bring the background closer. Telephoto lenses are great for portraits as they make them feel more flattering and intimate. Now, let's talk about aperture. It controls how much of your image is in focus from front to back. That's called depth of field. Aperture is measured in f numbers. A low number, like f1.4, give you a shallow depth of field. Only a small part of your image is in focus. This is fantastic for portraits. A higher f number, like f11, give you deep depth of field. More of the scene stays sharp. This is ideal for landscapes or architecture. The term bokeh is the appearance of the out-of-focus areas in your photo. It's not just about how blurred things are, but how that blur behaves, how soft or textured it looks, and how it renders bright highlights. Some lenses give you smooth, creamy bokeh. Others produce more defined shapes, like hexagons or cat's eyes, depending on the aperture. In Leica Lux, bokeh is simulated based on how real Leica lenses behave, at different apertures and across the frame. Try switching between lenses and apertures while you're shooting, or change them after the fact using the recompose feature. Notice how the framing and the depth of field of your photo shift, and ask yourself, which version best supports the story that you want to tell? The Leica Lux app is packed with color and film profiles that help shape the mood and texture of your photos. They're called looks, but they're not just for styling your image, they help direct what the viewer notices in your photo. With a different look applied, the same photo can tell a completely different story. Looks are grouped into three categories, and each one has a different role to play in shaping how your image feels and what it communicates. Color looks guide the eye through color. Depending on the exact look, it might boost warmth for a golden nostalgic feel, or it might cool things down for more muted cinematic effects. Consider using one of the color looks if color plays a key role in the scene and you want to shape how it comes across. Monochrome looks remove full color and render the image in shades of a single hue. This places more emphasis on shapes, textures, and the contrast between light and dark. They're great for simplifying busy scenes, highlighting strong compositions, or evoking a timeless documentary feel. Artist looks are created in collaboration with renowned photographers. For example, editorial photographer Greg Williams. Experiment with artist looks when you want to borrow the visual language of a seasoned photographer and see the world through their eyes. Most looks also let you add grain, a layer of texture that mimics the look of analog film. Grain adds subtle variation to flat areas like skies, shadows, or skin. This makes the image feel more tactile. You can adjust the amount of grain to suit the image. Just a little bit can warm up a clean photo, and heavier grain adds grit and character. Choosing a look is ultimately about your intention. What do you want the viewer to notice, and how do you want the photo to feel? Try this. Shoot the same scene with two different looks. One color, one monochrome. If the photo feels too flat or clear, play around with the amount of grain. And ask yourself, what serves the image better? Not just visually, but also emotionally. That's the power of a look.